Right. So as we wrap up on using Pacha for the decision, for identifying the career choices for the person. And of course, we then move on to Chiman. Now, many of you will know that Chiman is mostly used for getting answers, getting results. So the thing about Chiman is that it is temporal. It really, really depends on the asker. And so very importantly is to recognize who is the asker in this case. And so as we shall restrict the use of Chiman for career choices. And so this is meant for whether we are asking for ourselves or we are answering for another. And so here, usually again, let's come from the top. Whenever we would like to consider understanding. Now, it would be ideal to use budget. So therefore, we always would recommend that whenever you can, you use budget. Because when you use budget, you're using the person's DNA. You're using the person's natal chart. So basically, it is the person's soul's DNA. I mean, if you were to take the comparison of the biological physical DNA, whether a person will be a football player. Now, I'm sure many of you would agree, to determine whether a person can be suitable, has a career for a football player, you might envision the person to be tall, the person to be athletic. And so if you can look into the biological DNA, and from that, you're able to predict or determine that the person will be tall, then the propensity to be a football player is there. And so certain profession, certain career, the physical biological DNA can be very useful. But of course, for us today in Chinese metaphysics, we'll then prefer the soul's DNA for that career choice. So using Pachi would be considered to be effective, better. And once again, DNA is like a seed. And from a seed, we predict how the tree shall grow. But then, the seed can grow only in an environment that nurtures it well. So it does depend on where the seed is thrown, where barren. So therefore, for that, we look into feng shui. So therefore, feng shui is the remedy, and while Pachi is to look into the diagnosis for the soul. And so very importantly, as we map out the person, tremendously, what is very, very important is to immediately identify the useful gods, identify the white gods, and of course, identify what would be the negative gods. And so once we are able to map up, and as we know that there are 10 elements altogether, so all these 10 elements can be categorized into useful, void, and negative. Once again, what are void? What are void gods? Now, white gods are not just missing. White gods are those that are supposed to be useful, supposed to be useful, but missing. Therefore, it's a bit different from the rest. Therefore, white gods can have a different impact compared with negative gods as well. Right. So here, whenever we can, we shall use budget. But failure in which now we shall now use Chiman. So when using Chiman, of course, Chiman, unlike Pachi, is that Pachi has a natal chart is unchanging. So whether you read the chart today, next week, next year, it will be different. But while using Chiman, of course, Chiman is temporal. And therefore, in temporal measurement, timing is everything. And so, of course, in a very important part, the timing is the time that you ask. So ask and you shall receive. the answer is given at the point of asking. So, in a very important part is who is the asker? Who is the asker? Because sometimes the error can stem from this point. I mean, let's say you're in a meeting with friends at 7 o'clock at night for dinner, and then somebody asks a question, and you thought about that question, it lingers on, and then later when you reach home later at 10 o'clock at night, you then ponder on the question and you plot it on the chart. So the question is, who is the asker? Uh, was that the asker at 7 p.m.? Or are you the asker at 10 p.m.? Therefore, this very important is the timing of the asker. And therefore, here we would like to first of all establish who is the asker, because the answer is to the asker, and sometimes it may not be the actual person, it may just be you asking for it. Okay, now the next thing to do is that before we ask, perhaps we can say that the seriousness of the answer depends on the seriousness of the asker. And so the universe will reciprocate to the same level of seriousness. So sometimes, of course, we will find people who do not take this seriously enough, who perhaps you may find them at the point of abuse, in the sense that they ask Chairman all the time, even for simple things like what to eat for lunch and where to find their lost keychain and so on. I mean, in a way, we do find that Chairman could possibly help in that. But if the asker asks all the time, for every trivial issue, the person will soon receive trivial answers all the same. And therefore, here what we want to look for is outcome. So when asking a question, the question is, what will the outcome be? What will the outcome? uh, what will the outcome be? What will the outcome? Or what is the outcome? Or what will the outcome be if I? And I, of course, here means the asker, the asker. And so it will be important to know that I represents the asker, and of course, there is a cause of action. And so before we plot the chart, before we quickly take out the app and plot the chart, and over the last few sessions, I've already shared the chart with you. Most of you have the app to be able to plot the chart. And so again, what will the outcome be if I plot? Sometimes from time to time, when people ask for consultations or they ask questions, one of the pet peeves is people who have actually nothing to ask. They actually got nothing to ask. They're very interested, they're curious, but they actually don't have any real question. Especially, when they say, "Oh, you know how to read Pachicha? Okay, please plot for me, please read for me," and then that's it. So sometimes without any specific question, it becomes onerous. So once again, the seriousness of the answer depends on the seriousness of the asker. All right, so now as we move on to, we just get as we move on to uh, what are the career choices that we can now do, we now look into what kind of questions the person may ask in relation to career. Right, so now here we can see that number one, as usual and as commonly, the asker represents the seeker. So the seeker here may be the job seeker, the career seeker. And very often, of course, the point of interest immediately will be, as usual and often, then that will be your day master. So the day stamp, so the day stamp represents, so the day stamp represents the seeker. The job itself is open gate. Now there are two types of job. So in the past, open door, 开门 is the open door. So open door or open gate represents the job itself. If the job is civil, for civilians, for civilians. But in the past, or the origin of Chiman is for dispensing military advice. And for those seeking a military career, that would be your delusion door. Two. So these are the two jobs that one can look at. And so usually in our today modern day environment, uh, sometimes out of habit, we will immediately look at open door. So sometimes we forgot or we may not remember that occasionally the delusion door, or sometimes known as the stop gate, will be the job for executive power, military, or economy. So in a way, open door represents opportunities. And likewise, today in modern day, career to us will be opportunities. We would like to have opportunity. In a way, means we want money. We want money, while glory, victory, things of such are more for the stopgate, more for the delusion. So when uh, uh, one pursue a career in the sense for seeking glory, seeking victory through battle, then that may be the delusion. Now, in today, of course, we would expect that it is not going to be common, or perhaps in your entire lifetime, you might not even chance upon anyone today seeking military career, unless, of course, we are in a war-torn country, where drafting soldiers or we are at war. But sometimes we may also look at certain career such as non-profit. So perhaps instead of looking for a career for money, so we may say that the open door is a career for money. Occasionally, there are people who do look for jobs not for money. So this may refer to activists. So these may be people who are seeking to fight for a cause. So the NGOs, charitable organizations, you might agree with me that these activists do behave and operate very close to a military operations at times. Right. So anyway, that we're just looking at the two doors, and now as we move on to other comparison, the immediate boss. So the immediate boss, the relationship would be the chief. Therefore, so therefore here we have the chief, the star to represent the relationship with the boss. The leaks will be from the month stamp, people of the same rank. Subordinates will be from the hour stamp. From the hour stamp. Now, if there are interviews to face, if there are tests to meet, then here we may look into the Jingmen, which is the Bright Gate, and those will be for examination documents. And so it may be a bit different when one look at attending an interview. What is suitable for your career, and how will your environment be? Okay, so now let's look into one question at a time. And so perhaps now we may want to look for the kind of a question. So the kind of a question that we may have is, now once again, it really depends on what the question asks. So come, anybody who can just put into the key chat, what are the typical questions somebody may ask in relation to this kind of questions? And so normally one question that can stem from is, what kind of job should I look at? What kind of career should I pursue? And so if one again one is to explore the career or choices And so straight away we will, in the first instant, plot the chart. Okay, so as we plot the chart here, let's just take a look into the immediate chart right now on the screen. Let's just take this chart as it is. And from this chart, we would like to immediately plot what will be the asker's point of view, and what will be the outcome. Right, so right now here on the screen, immediately we can ask ourselves the question, what is the first point of reference to look at? What is the first point of reference to look at? Okay, I think I can find that my computer. Hold on. So the first point of reference to look at, of course, will be, where do we start? We start off with the asker. So you look at the asker number one. Where is the asker? The asker will be represented by the day's time. So I can see how bad my computer. So the day's time is run water. So run water represents the day's time. And so in the first instance, where do we find run water? So this may take a bit more time to acclimatize. Where do we find it? So we will find run water to be so therefore we will find run water to be south. Fantastic. Therefore we find run water to be south, and therefore that is the run water is. Okay, sorry. Okay. But as you can see, I think I have it. Right, so first of all, we identify that run water is in south. And this question is quite fantastic, as we normally would consider what represents your job. What represents your job? And what represents your job is the open door. So what represents your job is the open door. And what represents your boss? Okay, sorry, I can my. So what represents your boss is the chief. Chief. So I know sometimes it takes time to understand the Chinese character. I know sometimes to placate an international audience, there are times people move everything to English, so everything becomes English. But sometimes I feel that if we repeat or we continuously use the Chinese names and characters, it can help us to we get used to it. We get used to it, and sometimes it might help us uh, to be bilingual if possible. Right, so here we do find that all falls into place. All falls into place, and that may represent that there are some kind of harmony. So the harmony represents that the asker falls on the same palace as the job that falls on the same palace as the boss. So this brings us the affinity that the asker has with the job, which has with the boss. So this indicates that number one, this will indicate that there will be harmonious relationships between the boss, the open door, and the asker, in that sense. And the next part, of course, is whether that palace will be auspicious or not. Now, for those who know Chiman, here, can you discover one palace formation that is very auspicious? Anyone can recognize any palace of officials. So usually one of the very auspicious palace formation is the flying bird falls into the cave. And so right now on this chart, that happens to be in the north. That happens to be in the north. That happens to be outside the palace to which we're looking at. Therefore, that auspicious, one of the most auspicious achievement formation you can find is not in the right palace. So this indicates that the palace that we have is now on the south, which is also at the moment the formation is known as the hidden grave deity and also small snake day noble. So all in all, that represents a more neutral, slightly positive environment. So the prospects for the person's career would be, well, you can say slightly positive, noble, but it will not find tremendous prosperity. Therefore, this will be the answer for it. Now, that South Palace belongs to what element? What element is Li Kwa? Fire. Fantastic, Jenny. Therefore, if that is the case, the question comes into what industry should I be looking at? What industry should I be looking at? What career path should I be going for? And so one may find that the palace is one of fire, and where the three of them sits. And more often than not, rainwater will be rainwater will always find pink fire to be a useful god. To find fire to be relatively favorable because that represents money. So in this case, if of course the asker will know which career path should I pursue, what sector or industry should I be. Fire would be one that would be favorable to the day master, and one will find the career to be slightly positive. Okay, so therefore this would be the case of using Chimon to answer. So in the first part, that's where what do we want to look at? We want to look at number one, whether the palace is vigorous. And so the how auspicious will the palace be? Secondly, we want to consider that in Chimon, the three nobles. Now, of course, as in all metaphysics, the rules can be increasingly longer and complicated. But the general rule is that when you see the Yi wood, the pink fire, and the Ting fire, these are the three nobles, and they will generally be favorable. Therefore, this would be a nobleman. Then we have favorable gates. Then, of course, favorable structure. Okay, so altogether, this would then be how many? One. So if the checklist is one, the checklist would be two, the checklist would be three, and the checklist would be four. And so if all these four comes into place, then one can consider that the outcome would be good. Now let us just take a look into another chart, shall we? We took a look into the chart immediately. Okay, so now as we explore this chart, let me just copy it over to the whiteboard for the time being. Sorry. Hi Arif, first time here today, welcome. So please feel free at any time to, as usual, just come to ask questions on the chat at any time. Yeah. So as you would know now, we share the link shortly before 9 p.m. on occasional Sunday. So notice will be given if any Sundays will be vacated. Sorry. All right. I just want. Okay. Sorry. I think by now you can realize that I'm having Right. So now let's take a look into another chart, shall we? All right. Okay. So now same question. We have an asker looking for a job. Okay. Oh, Jenny very fast. Huh? Okay. So immediately we're looking at today, 5th of October, we find the Ting Day Master. So firstly, we always start as usual. We start with the Ting Day Master. And when do we find the Ting Day Master? We find it here. Okay. Day Master. So first of all, the Ting Day Master will be found in here. And when we refer to job, where is the job? The job is represented by open door. Open door. So when the job is open. And then we also find the chief. Right. Okay, so now unlike the chart earlier, this time the career and the career and the day stamps are in different balances. So whenever there are different balances, you always refer to the element of the balance. What is the balance of the job? Uh, kan Kwa. So fantastic. So kan Kwa is water. Kan Kwa is water, and the day master is in Chen Kwa, which is then wood. Therefore, water produces wood. So water produces wood. So from the so as we look into the checklist, let's run through to the checklist. So the first checklist is whether number one, the palace. The palace here represents whether or not, whether or not the job gate Kaiman generates the seeker's palace. So yes, we have a favorable interaction. Here we find that the job gate sits on water and water produces it, and therefore it can. We can also find success where the seeker's palace conquers the job gate. It conquers the job gate. And so this may be the scenario where wood weakens water. So I mean, you can say that that's about the same thing, isn't it? Therefore, this person will have good bargaining power with the career. So we look into the first. Now there will be further complication, of course. What else can you observe here? The day master is in the palace that is on the east, Chen Kwa, which of course the door is a live door. So the live door represents a favorable outcome that the person will be a survivor. But then one will also notice now the negative aspect. This palace is in Kongma, which of course means death and emptiness. Death and emptiness. Now, when we look below, we can find that here it is. So here we do find that both of these palaces are red. Both of these palaces are red in color, which represents negative. It represents negative structures. And these two structures also will be related to fire, where the Chen Kwa, the formation represents fire enters grappling, and fire here represents the day master. So this may indicate that number one, the job on hand may be favorable. The person may have support from the boss, and the job is a job that the day master can master. So the person is able to meet the requirements of the job, but somehow the job faces some obstacle. It faces some obstacle. So this may mean there's something that is missing, something that because Kongman, death and emptiness represents a void. So it represents that the person is not currently happy. So it does not bring happiness and they feel entrapped. So grappling hook represents a trap. It represents that the person somehow felt tied down. The person felt. And to go further now into that relationship, we now want to proceed. Now we want to proceed by looking at the relationship of also considering all the foreign. And so in the first part, as we look at the interactions, we see that the open door produces the day stamp. So open door produces the day stamp, great success. So the job opportunity supports the applicant. And so if the asker will ask, will I get this job on hand? Yes. Based on the following chart, the answer is yes. Yes. Great success. You will get the job. But should you accept it? No. So getting a job and accepting it may be a different thing, isn't it? Now, of course, if the day stamp is in harmony, meaning to say same element is harmony, then smooth success. Smooth. Now, open door element is metal. Open doors element is metal. So where is the natal palace for open door? Qianguo. Therefore, we find the northwest. So northwest sector will then be northwest sector will then be the natal palace. So if the open door is timely and prosperous, then it will be inherently positive. We find that the metal door is timely. If the open door is timely. So if it's timely, then it will be prosperous. So this represents the auspicious interactions for the day master, for the job seeker. And of course, now we come to consider what happens when there is a countering. So if the open door counters, then this would be challenge. So we call this challenging or compelling. Now, if that is the case, and if the person desires this job, if let's say the job on offer, the career is from a reputable company, and the person is very eager. I mean, if let's say this is a question about going for a job interview on a Ivy League university, and the person has all intention to join that. So what should you do? Well, it says here that there will be a challenge. So what will be the remedy? The remedy here is for the applicant to now take a more aggressive position, behave more aggressively during the job interview. So usually, as we know, one may consider that during job interviews, one may want to behave better in the sense of being more agreeable, demonstrate that you are a team player, demonstrate that you are cooperative. All those strategies, put it aside. Play the aggressive game. Maybe selling yourself loudly, blow your own trumpet, might appear to be a little bit boastful, to be a bit more arrogant, but then of course that may be perceived to mean that you have confidence in your job. Now, if the day stamp counters the open door, this is where the host now benefit. Now the host benefits. As the host benefits, promotion is unlikely. Yeah, promotion is unlikely. And the remedy here will now be uh, to play a more submissive game. So not to blow your now to reverse the action, to be humble, to be cooperative, to be subversive, in order perhaps to still find the salvage. But at the end of the day, if you do find that the open door is in the graveyard, so when metal enters into earth, the open door is in the Kenkwa or the Ken Palace. So this represents open door entering into graveyard. So this would indicate that the setback or the challenge will be surmountable. Very likely the person will fail. Therefore, that would be just how we look into the achievement ceremony. Now, next, let's take a look into what represents the environment now. So now we come into the next question, the atmosphere. Now, looking into the atmosphere here, what is what is the deity? What deity are we looking at? So, what deity are we looking at? This two normally represents the macro. So this represents the macro environment. The plates, the earth plates represents people. And so these deities represents the environment. So in this environment here, the stars and the deity, we'll find out what do we have. What do we have is June. 9 Earth. So what is 9 Earth? So if you hit a 9 Earth, what does it mean? Negative, inactivity. Suggests a period of inactivity, slow growth, potentially lead to a decline if it's a new business venture. So this is where if the person asks, will I succeed in the job interview? Will I get a job? Yes, yes. You will likely get a job offer. Should I accept? No, no. Therefore, there will be no. It's already fire entering into a grappling hook. Therefore, with duty on the part and Kongmat, this all represents that the environment will not be too bright. But should I stay there for a while? Yes, yes, you can stay there for a while. Uh, why am I able to stay there for a while? Well, you have the life door. The boss is in the boss the chief, the boss or chief supports you, the career supports you, and you're on a life door, so you are able to meet your requirements. You will have good proper rating. But will I get a good bonus? No. Why? Because the environment is slow. You are in a business that is no, right? That is in the So should I start looking for another job? Yeah, you can. When? When should I start looking for another job? So when? Anybody? So if the question comes in, if somebody asks you, when should I look for another job? What would be your answer? The person asks for time. So your answer is right after Chinese New Year next year. In a month of what? In a month of the rabbit, right after March. And anyway, for many companies, March would be when they would have already received their annual bonus for the year. And so that may be a time for you to plot and for you to move into it. All right, so this represents looking into the new environment and how the environment. So as we look into the eight deities for it, so looking into the eight deities for it will be a clue for this particular. Okay, come, let's take a look into one more chart that we can do, and then we can strengthen this. Then, of course, there will be more to come. Let me just randomly select one. Right. Okay, so let's take a look into this chart now. So sometimes when we are increasingly more accustomed to reading charts, then we are able to read faster, able to appear to be seamless, and of course, importantly, try to avoid using all these jargons on people. It can be pretty unsettling when you use words that are not in English. All right, so now let's take a look into this chart. Okay, so now the person asks you, all right, I got a job, and how will my environment be in this new environment? What's my job outlook like as the question begins to be formed? All right, so where do we start? Here we have another. Sorry, wrong. So no. This is the same. This is the same chart that I had earlier. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I am supposed to. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. This chart. This chart. Okay. Take a look. I think you can see some of the formation already. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look into this chart. As usual. Okay. As usual, first part will be Keng Day Master. Keng Day Master is in the east. Correct, Jenny. Thank you. All right. So where is Open Door? Open Door is here. Where is Chief? All right. Yeah. Therefore, Chief will be okay. So straight up, we can see that the Hyman, the open door is in the northwest, which is the Qianqua. And Qianqua is the natal palace for the open door. And metal chops wood, and by right now the day master is in the east. So metal chops wood. First one negative. Can we also see that this chart is in Fu Yin? Yes, that's right. It's a Fu Yin chart. So Fu Yin chart represents stagnation. It represents non-progress. So it represents non-progress. So the chart is stagnant. Why is it stagnant? Fu Yin. Fu Yin is stagnant. The job counters the day master. So therefore, countering effect, indicating challenges, represents challenges. Now, usually, of course, when we have the chief in the palace, the chief tends to dispel all negative. And so this is the case where this asker will have the protection of the chief, will have the protection of the boss. So somehow, the day master finds favor, will be in the good books of the chief. And so the chief will be your patron. Very important for career to have a patron in the company, somebody high up who can do that. Now here, what is the relationship with the colleagues? What will be the relationship with the colleagues? Where do we find colleagues? Colleagues of the same rank. Colleagues of the same rank will be the stem from your team. And where do we find team? And we find thing clashing with the curve. So one is east, one is west. And so one of the challenges of this job is that to be in competition and in conflict with your peers and your colleagues. So one can expect aggressive politicking, aggressive politicking with a tiger, the white tiger sitting in the palace, and Tui Kwa is talk and very talkative, gossipy, and argumentative. Therefore, this will be the environment that the asker is currently in. And also now we take a look into what represents the deity. What represents the deity? So the deity represents chief. So the deity is chief. So when the deity is chief, there is a highly positive outlook, as mentioned, that a person may have the support from the boss. Support. And while the peers represents negative, because of the white tiger, because of the great mood brings about sexual harassment. So potentially sexual harassment. The red phoenix brings about legal problems, legal entanglement. Black tortoise may bring embezzlement, fraud, theft that comes in. Surging snake may bring culture shock, a completely different belief system, very unsteady, very volatile proceedings. And so we find three positive stars, which is in the nine heavens and also the sixth harmony. And therefore, three positive, the rest are all quite negative when it comes to working environment. Maybe that's life, isn't it? More people are unhappy at work than happy, isn't it? So if you follow this ratio, then 30% might be happy, the 70% will find itself not in very favorable working environment. All right. Therefore, this would be just to bring about the outlook, and moreover, the structure of the net, great white, same palace. So the great white, same palace represents Fu Yin, in a way, and of course, the heavily net four spread also represents negative formation. And therefore, the environment here would be one that is a bit toxic. It's a bit toxic. So there's a pro and con, of course. The day master will find protection from the boss, but maybe the protection from the boss may indicate the jealousy from the peers, the hostile politics on the end, and of course the stagnating career. So overall, this person would represent, may have a sense of unhappiness. In a way, we can see that many occasions when somebody comes to ask achievement, the person already have in their mind some sense of unhappiness, dissatisfaction, and thus seeking an answer and seeking achievement. And so these would be some of the telltale signs that you can get from it. Now, one last question here before we close up. If you have the protection from your boss, but at the envy and the competition amongst your peers who may play aggressive, bitter politics using rumors, while the job is pretty much stagnant. And the job stagnation may also be due to a little bit of legal issues regarding losses. So this may be the case where the company is not making money at present, not making good money. Now, one last question here. Do the subordinates support this day master? Do the subordinates? Where do we find subordinates? What represents subordinate in this chart? Subordinates are represented by the hour. Subordinates are represented by the hour. So where do we find the hour? The hour is Cha. Cha is a bit difficult, isn't it? You won't find it here. Therefore, Cha resides in the curve. And so subordinates is in the same palace as the curve. Correct, Arif. Very good. So subordinates is in the same palace as the curve. And so yes, yes. So all in all, we do find that in this environment, though it is toxic, though it is negative by far with the challenges, but we do find that the day master or the asker do have some redeeming features with the support of the colleagues and also the protection of them. And therefore, perhaps the person may continue to stay or continue to work. Oh, of course, if the person is no longer interested, the person can seek to move on. All right, so with this in mind, we have come to plot a few charts and the application of how Chiman can be used for dispensing career advice. But of course, as usual, we would rather have Archie to come in, but failure in which then Chiman can be used to provide valuable information. All right, thank you. So that would be a wrap up for today, and I'll see you. Not too sure whether I'll see you next week or otherwise, uh, because of my. I'll just keep you all posted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. All right, so good night. All right, thank you.